As a gamer, there are things that you should know, that in this profession, the sun does not shine and the grass stays brown. And at some point, when you realize you don't want to watch the latest TV show because normie shows are garbage and you want to play a video game, and then you know the horrifying truth that your media that you've come to love by playing something like Dustborn has turned a new leaf into something bad. I am in a medium that rewards the low bar for video games. A medium that most people would write off as nothing but fat losers in their mom's basement do all day. When in reality, it's just normie people who don't care about the medium itself but want to be a part of something, including the radical individuals such as leftists. And this is not to say that casual gamers haven't yelled out to the clouds and say something like The Last of Us Part 2 is bad or Dustborn is bad, but when you really dig into the root problem of why video games are bad, and these casuals don't call it out because it's too subtle enough that they won't notice, it's not a surprise why gaming has become a former shell of itself. Because when you introduce casuals into a medium that they don't care about and then multiply like rabbits and have louder voices, the actual gamers will be left out, and all that's going to be left is garbage. Like, have you ever had one of those moments that you're trying to show your dad a modern video game for the first time, and you're like, hey dad, this game is great, it's got a great plot, it's got the best graphics you've ever seen and the best character designs, and then you put on Cyberpunk 2077 and he sees all the glitches and he just starts laughing his ass off. And then you realize what you have done, because dad hasn't gotten used to modern gaming trash with all the glitches and unfinished products. He had bigger expectations for games made for older audiences, yet this game is childish, it's glitchy. And sure, they came out with patches and DLC to fix these problems, but your first impression is already ruined with this overly ambitious project that was never going to live up to the hype. So CD Projekt Red gets this huge opportunity to make Cyberpunk 2077 along with Mike Pondsmith, who was on the original tabletop game that's been going on for 30 years at this point. They wanted to make a Cyberpunk game for the new audience to hopefully get people to buy the tabletop game. And yes, the game isn't going to have the 80s art style, which is a bummer, but hey, we got Mike on the team, and people who don't even like tabletop games like this guy. He has a beloved cult following, tabletop nerds love him for the most part. Adapting Cyberpunk to a video game format was perfect. The game is violent, which teenagers will love it. It's based off the original, so the 80s audience will pay attention to it. It has a bright color palette, so Zoomers will be attracted to it. It has recognizable actors in it, so adults will like it. It also has pseudo-RPG mechanics in it and GTA stuff, so your older teenage geek of a brother might play it with you. But like, this game was delayed so many times. The fact that a car wasn't going over 60 miles per hour in the trailers was a red flag. The AI sucks, and every promise the team made fell apart, and it totally disrespected the memories of the other Cyberpunk creators. Yeah, sure, they are going to release patches or whatever, but if you wanted to take this big risk with this famous sci-fi property and try to bring it to a larger audience, why even allow this to happen? Why not push this as hard as you possibly can to make this the most 10 out of 10 game ever made for this generation? Listen, I understand these are game programmers and they love games and want to do that as their job, and they don't really get the choice of what game to work on or decisions of the higher powers. For all we know, CD Projekt Red was held back by the men in business suits. Who knows? So many games in modern times are like this, empty promises and buggy glitchy messes that give Fallout New Vegas a run for its money. And I don't have a problem with Cyberpunk being stylistically different or something, that's not my problem. We understand that nowadays most video games are going to be 3D, and they're going to be following the trend that people want 3D video games. And while yes, that's not a great excuse for these games to look this way, or act this way, if Cyberpunk was just having more polish, tighten up the script more, tighten up the characters more, give the actors more to do, and make it respectful to Mike Pondsmith's work, it would have worked fine. The game is so beautiful, it looked beautiful, and the aesthetic is perfect, but the writing and the gameplay isn't up to par. Like in the 90s and 2000s, you had Masashi Susuboma, and he made Silent Hill, and then he directed a few other games like Twin Bee, which are both classics to this day, and then he makes Silent Hill 2, and this game is so beautifully made and stands the test of time and celebrated to this day as a classic horror game that defined horror in the video game genre and is celebrated outside of gaming circles, and a classic to this day that it got a shitty remake. Years later, Masashi would direct other titles such as Miitopia and WWE games and Silent Hill 4, and hasn't really made a classic video game in years, and just tries to keep his name going with the Silent Hill franchise. So with that, check this out. The 90s and 2000s were the best time in video game history. Thousands of classics came out around the 90s. You had Shigeru Miyamoto, who showed up at Nintendo during the 80s and just cranked out classics in our childhood. Black Isle Studios is established, and they make the most famous apocalyptic game series ever made called Fallout. Ubisoft came around and started pouring out their own classic video games. The 90s and early 2000s went fucking nuts. There were classics coming out every year, especially during the 90s, to recover from the gaming crash of the 80s. It was mandatory to make the best possible product possible. So many good games came out during this time. Conker's Bad Fur Day, Donkey Kong Country, God of War, Shadow of the Colossus, the fucking Berserk games, Silent Hill 2. The Pokemon series was coming out around this time. Final Fantasy VII, Half-Life, the Resident Evil series. Game studios were going insane. Video game consoles were so expensive and always sold out, but people wanted fucking SNES games and the PlayStation and all these consoles to play the video games because this shit was amazing. Kingdom Hearts happened. People were paying out this shit and shipping these consoles and video games across the country to nerd clubs just so people could play Earthbound. Edgy and kid-friendly developers could do whatever they wanted with no restrictions. Companies went so far with experimentation and developing their own cliches and formulas for certain genres. Steve Clover defined what MMO genre is going to be. Hironobu Saguchi solidified what JRPGs are going to be. The guys who made Mario showed the formula for 2D and 3D platformers. And of course, Silent Hill 2 really put forward what 3D horror games were going to be. The PlayStation had games that turned out to be classics. In the early 2000s, you had the Borderlands series, the DS, and the Wii games, and really interesting indie games were coming out. The video game industry was a bubbling industry. Rare is established in the late 90s and really boomed the Nintendo 64 console. However, after 2014, the gaming industry fell apart after Gamergate and casual started coming in, and The Last of Us fucking ruined everything. Video games that are not attached to existing properties do not thrive in this industry. AAA games are struggling to recoup its losses in 2025 because of the dumb decisions to follow trends and political ideologies than to make a good product and trying to market itself to the biggest fucking audience of casuals when those people do not play games or care about games as much as actual gamers. It's no shock that Ubisoft is about to shut its doors because AAA companies have lowered the bar so bad since the end of the 2000s. Even Nintendo plays it safe now by just being Disney of the gaming industry and just releasing sequels to their beloved properties because nostalgia eaters eat this shit up. People nowadays do not care about quality and will accept the bare minimum, and companies know this. In this industry, original ideas do not go far unless you are indie. Where is the conceived notion to make indie games more noticed among big budget gaming? Why not push actual good game developers so people buy these games more? Like you have Ed McMillan, who made Binding of Isaac and Super Meat Boy, which were both monstrous successes, and he kept making more money from the end as nigh and even made more money from the release of the Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus DLCs. Why wasn't this guy bumped up more in the industry while still keeping him independent? Like, sure, it's cool, his games are now on the Switch, but why not give this man a AAA budget to this guy's work to keep them independent and to keep giving them motivation to keep making good shit? Indie were made because people who actually cared about games but didn't want the restrictions of the industry on them. Do you guys remember old shit like Indie the movie and Smosh game parodies or the old RPG Maker genre? Because when you see that these people actually take the time and effort to make these things, because you can tell it was made from passion and hard work. If you go into the gaming industry with money and politics on your mind, the game will fail. And yes, you can turn a profit every now and then with this idea if you have a profitable name behind it and it's a well-known company, but the numbers show how making a game with this idea in mind does not work most of the time. Where is the effort to try to make the best possible product anymore? People think that Astrobot is going to stand the test of time as showing of gaming healing, and while it isn't in the lineup as this awful piece of shit like Star Wars Outlaws or Dragon Age the Veilguard, Astrobot is not going to have the notoriety as something like Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie, as these massive 3D platform projects that revolutionized and became notable for the influence of 3D gaming by that point. It's not like there isn't any good games coming out. Gloomwood shows that modern games have a shot in the indie scene, but have luck finding out about this stuff when there's new garbage being introduced every single Game Awards and every indie show that is just getting worse and worse every year, and people playing these games have the bar so low that some shit like Balatro was about to win Game of the Year. Like, why do you have to make video games for casual gamers? Do you actually think that casual gamers give a shit about games as much when casuals will spend all their fucking money on loot boxes? Like, the biggest problem with AAA gaming is trying way too hard to market itself towards a certain tiny audience of blue-haired rapscallions. If someone with blue hair goes up to Activision with a game about bisexual trans wolf named Biofire in a visual novel style, There needs to be a button that says drop a piano on them and tell them to bring something better and more marketable towards gamers, instead of marketing towards a group of people that are the smallest group in the world or casuals that don't care about the medium anyways. South Korea realized that if they wanted to make money on their games, they can't bow down to the casuals or woke leftists, and made their main character of Stellar Blade sexualized and the gameplay action-based. And sure, Stellar Blade got a lot of shit from the woke leftists and casual community who don't want any female characters sexualized, but Stellar Blade is important because it proves if you market yourself towards gamers, you'll make a profit. For modern gaming, it seems to even make a profit anymore is to make a game based off of source material and try to get people to the new remade beloved work instead of just trying to thin out programmers to other companies and trying to make any money off of a beloved property. Maybe go back to your roots and market towards gamers, as the modern way of copying itself and putting in politics clearly doesn't work. Yes, once in a while a game with certain ideologies can make sales if you flip the coin well enough and make it subtle enough, but if the subtleness isn't on the upswing, it will not work. Why didn't anyone say that Dustborn would be a horrible, awful idea, that putting literal fascism and yelling racist at people would make the game flop so hard that it would give people the wrong idea that it's a parody? Whatever, some idiots probably like this shit. And then you stop and you lift your head up towards the sky and you see Synthetic Man's face in the sun telling you about how bad these games are. And then you look at his channel with all the channel strikes and you wonder, how long is he gonna last on YouTube before he just gets deleted off the platform? And then I think about myself and my YouTube channel, and then I'm thinking, maybe I have like 3 more years of my YouTube channel before I get deleted off the platform. I don't know what I'm gonna do for those 3 years. Is Berserk gonna finally be finished? Am I gonna be caught up on Berserk? Is Pokemon ever gonna stop making games and make something else for a change? Will GTA 6 finally come out by that point? I didn't even finish all the Sonic games throughout the years. Listen, to really solve this problem, we really have to go towards indie games, because indie games need to be more recognized than they actually are. Indie games are so popular because they are so diverted from mainstream AAA video games. You don't have to make the game look realistic to sell to gamers. That's just the narrative that's been pushed for like 6 years at this point. Every now and then, some like pixel thing or low polygon game gets a little cult following, like something like Shovel Knight or Braid. I remember a lot of people fucking played Shovel Knight and Braid back in the day. This is like actually appealing to actual fucking gamers who care about video games. It focuses strictly on the gaming aspect instead of a story or having a message of some sort. Not saying a game can't have a message, but there are way too many games coming out that are story driven and have messages in them instead of just focusing on the gameplay aspect, because that's what a video game is. You game with it. It's interactive. You game. While CD Projekt Red did not keep up their promises with Cyberpunk 2077, it is important. These are not bland-looking characters. This is not a bland world. And while the gameplay isn't up to par, it is important that if it was just given more polish and more time, it could have been the greatest game ever made for this generation, probably. I want to see a game like Cyberpunk again, with more time and polish. And I want to see more budget towards indie games, and I want people to support good indie games. If the tide can be turned around and the industry can be changed to market itself towards actual gamers, maybe the industry can heal. Stellar Blade, Cyberpunk, and Astrobot are games people like despite its issues because gamers enjoyed them. And while I don't like Cyberpunk and Astrobot, at least it's better than Dragon Age the Veilguard. And I hate Astrobot because Balatro would have been a funny win for the Game Awards show. If this video convinced you that gaming is shit nowadays, then I did my job. And if you were like me and you were sick of politics and games, and we take down Toucan Sam and make gaming great again, rise up! Who's with me? Oh, just me? I guess so. If you guys enjoy this video, thanks for watching. This is a rant that went nowhere as usual. And if you guys are interested, I might start live streaming on YouTube. I might stream games I hate while vaping, and I might stream good games when I'm vaping. And with that, goodbye.